Hi, welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's episode, we're going to pick up where we left off last week, which is finishing the panel on the bottom of the driver's door for Ellie's Coupe. I made the panel, welded it on, and it just ran out of time. So what I'm going to do now, I've got to grind this weld flat. I'm going to hammer weld it, and then more than likely there'll be one or two little pinholes that I'll expose or something. Have to fill those up, but we'll get that all flattened out. When I get it on the car, I will probably also have to roll this edge down a little bit more, because when you're pounding the edge back on, you're folding the edge over, it tends to kind of fold it up this a little bit, but I'm not going to adjust that till I actually get it the door on the body, and then we'll basically align the bottom of the door to fit the inside of the body itself. Also, hopefully we'll get the right size front spring for the 33 Ford frame. And then I got a couple more things I want to do on the Camera Ladies chassis, and then whatever else we can fit in this week. So follow along. We're working on 32 and 33 Fords. So back on working on Ellie's Coupe, the driver's door. Before I dressed the welds on the panel on the other side there, we patched on last week's episode. The owner asked me if I would take out the door latch, the window regulator, and the dovetail here, because well, he was going to do it, but then he had to go away for a while. He says, you might as well do it while I'm away, get it out, and then we can go to working on it. The reason why I'm bringing it up, and the reason I talk about it, I probably should have done a video, is getting some of these nasty old screws out. Now, I got all of them out without breaking them. I was told or shown a trick not so long ago. Either take an oxyacetylene torch or acetylene torch, or even a propane torch, which is what I did here, and essentially take that screw and heat it up until you can get it as almost red hot. Then take a piece of paraffin wax, give it a little dip around it. It'll smoke, might even catch fire a little bit, but essentially the paraffin wax, when it superheats, it'll go down through the screws. Now, so far, I think I've done this 50 or more times, and there was only one screw so far that I wasn't able to get out that was rusted in place. I mean, once you put the wax around it, you got to give the screw a tap with the screwdriver, and then usually a nice good crack will bring it out. But the paraffin wax trick, just putting it out there, I'd have to say 49 out of 50 times so far for me. It's worked every time, and it worked all 14 times this time. I mean, this was pretty rusty. This is not a Western car or a Arizona car. This is an Eastern car, so it's been sitting around in the rust, you know, in kind of our weather here. So usually things don't come out very easily, and more often than not, if you don't do something like this, they will break, and then you're drilling and tapping them out. So anyway, give it a try. Like I said, heat the screw up red hot. Give it a little touch of paraffin wax or candle wax or whatever, and then just give it a whack with a hammer. The screwdriver will whack with a hammer on the top of the screw, and then usually it will come out every time. So I say, works for me. So there's the passenger side door all put in place. The welds are ground. I've got the edge all knocked down, so it's pretty much flush with the subframe. So I got nice lines there. I might have to tweak it just a little bit more. Some of the door gaps, like I said, on the other side, that's going to be like a next step. There's nothing really serious along the bottom that I have to adjust for the door gap, but like on the side there, you see there's a little bit too much of a gap for my liking, so I'm going to have to address that. But then up as we go along here, it's pretty good. Like I said, fixing the chop is going to be a separate thing to do, because in some cases there's the sheet metal on the outside that has to be addressed. But once I cut this away, I can see already that on the inside some of it's not welded, so I'm going to have to take care of that. And then of course over here we have the exact same thing as the other side. The B-pillar on the body was leaned in. I'm going to have to split that and bring it back, and then try and fix that chop the best that I can. So anyways, we got the bottom patch on the driver's side door all taken care of now. Today I'm going to work on some of the small things of the camera lady's chassis as we kind of push it to get ready to get the body onto it and stuff. One of the last things I've got to do on my list is hook up the emergency brake cables. Now we've got a low car shifter and a low car e-brake cable. At one point in time, I had this bracket that would go on there somewheres. It's left over from a previous project. I think ultimately if I screw around with it enough, it might fit, but it doesn't fit the way that it does right now. And I think it's mainly because of the way the AOD transmission is bracketed up. So I don't think we're going to use that. We'll just save that for something in the future. Now with the emergency brake cable kit, they came with these two adjusters here. Ideally, it's going to fit somewhere right about there, but right now that is too high. I would like to make it so that it's kind of in line with the adjuster right here. So like there's two adjustment points, one for the cables, the outside cables, which is this bracket, and then the inner cables, there's set screws there that the inner cables go through, and then this will adjust. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to make a new bracket to replace this gold one. Probably I'll measure it up, but it looks about 1.25 inches that it has to drop down from here. So I'm going to go over in the other shop, make one of these up, put a coat of black paint onto it, and then get ready to put the e-brake cables in. So plugging away, running cables and pipes and tubes and everything else on the camera lady's chassis, all kinds of little things, but they all kind of add up, all things that need to be done. So one thing I showed you earlier, I needed to make the emergency brake cable support and make it go a little bit lower. So there's the finished product. So I took a piece of 1x1 square tubing, angled it, drilled a couple holes, and then welded the existing bracket to the bottom of it, threw a coat of black paint on, and there we are. We're now sitting about 1 inch lower to come in line with the handle over here. So I've got one line run now. So I'll go around the other side. So there's the first e-brake cable. I've got it supported by 2 clamps. And then right over there, put a piece of rubber on it. So in case it rubs up against anything or chafes or whatever, it's not going to chafe through. Probably the existing cable will never chafe through anyways, but I always like to put a piece of rubber on it just the same. The other thing I did was wanted to run the battery cable. The battery box is going to sit behind the seat. So I use 2-gauge, I don't have an example over here, but I'm using 2-gauge copper wire coming off the starter, and again just going along the inside of the frame with brackets every 12 inches or so. And I've got the loose piece here which I will funnel up through the bottom of the body when we put it on, so that's in place already. And then from the last episode, ran the fuel line on the other side, again with brackets all the way around, making sure it isn't loose. And then I dug out the gas tank. We're going to have to paint the gas tank and everything else, get the sending unit and the pickup. It's covered up right now, but we've got the braided line coming up to this point. I didn't cut it short. It's the full 10 feet that I ordered, so I'm going to have to put either a bracket on the end of it and then actually do another line to the pickup, but we'll sort something out there. Probably do that over the next couple of weeks or so, get that kind of finished up. So next up, what I'm going to do is I will fish the other brake line, an emergency brake line for the driver's side, run that through here up to this point, and then we're going to connect it up to the e-brake handle. Oh, 2 other things I had to take care of. They were, again, just small, tiny little things. Had to get some line here for the PCV valve, 3/8 ID. Man, I don't know if any of you guys have bought this tubing at the local car shops and stuff. We used to buy it for 59 or 99 cents a foot. I think it's like $6 a foot or something like that now. And then also the vacuum line going from the carburetor to the distributor. Like I said, we're just kind of picking away at as many things as we can on the chassis here before we take the body over to the other shop. We still are full over there right now with other work. Going to do a ground wire also. I've got the cable, I've got the ends. We'll do a ground wire from the engine to the frame. And then try and finish off as many of these small little things on this episode. So here's one of the reasons why we haven't moved the camera lady's 32 Roadster body over to this place to start doing the body work. Brenda's Roadster is back. Not for any bad reasons or anything, but it's back to do a couple of shakedown runs and stuff on it. The owner had taken it back. The clutch wasn't as good as what it could be, so we took it back and we're making some adjustments to the linkage and whatnot. The other thing we're doing, we're taking it for a few more runs, basically up and down the road, and probably trying to put about 100 miles onto it if we can, just to shake everything down, go around, check all the nuts and bolts, check all the hose clamps and everything else, make sure nothing leaks. I did have to tune the carburetor a little bit, because one thing that was going on was when we put the vent on the back here, when we set up the PCV valve, it actually introduced more air into the engine. So therefore it was running a little bit too lean. It wasn't starting very easily. So anyways, that was a quick little fix. Just adjusted the idle screws up and it seems to be running good now. We'll take it for a few more runs. I also noticed that the steering was a little bit loose. I kind of initially attributed it to the steering box itself, but what it turned out to be was the steering arm down there wasn't seated far enough on the splines. I'm not sure if I can show you. Yeah, I can. Okay, right there. So this arm wasn't seated far enough on the splines, or the splines were too long. Not sure what the case was. It was on safely, but it was on a little loose. So what we did, once we figured out what was going on here, we put some spacers onto it. And now this nut snugs everything up tight against the spline, and there's no little looseness in the steering. So that's kind of great. Another thing we found, it's part of the shakedown process. Now, all flatheads leak. Everybody that owns them, they know that they leak a little bit of water, they leak a little bit of oil, and there's a normal amount that's kind of okay. But I noticed in the back of the engine, where the rear main seal was, we were getting extra drips. And one side of the engine was more wet than the other. So anyways, what we found was the oil pressure sending unit was leaking around the threads. So again, simple, quick fix, part of the shakedown of when you're building one of these cars. Took everything out, put some sealant around the threads. No problem, we don't leak anymore. So anyways, we're gonna keep it here for a few more days, take it for a few more drives. Quite happy with it, but just take it for a drive, bring it back, get underneath it, check everything out, take it for another drive, do the same thing. Once it has about 100 miles onto it or so, it's going to go back to the owner, and then we'll get on to something else. So just finishing up the e-brake cable here tonight. We've got the driver's side line run there along the inner side of the cross member all the way to the back, and I got a little piece of rubber there where the potentially, don't know if you can see it or not, right there, there's some rubber onto it just where it could potentially hit the frame. Again, not necessary, but just a little extra, I guess, if you want to call it that. And then we've got the two cables hooked up right now to the e-brake cable, and then it just needs to be adjusted a little bit. It's adjusted as far as tension goes, but I've got to go into the back drums and actually tighten the drums up just a little bit. But it's, for all intents and purposes, everything is hooked up now. The other thing that we've got to do is order a drive shaft. I know some people will make their own, cut their own. Like in other episodes, I prefer to go out and actually get a drive shaft made up and balanced. A couple places around that'll do that. So essentially what you want to do is you want to take your yoke in the transmission. You're going to push it all the way in and then pull it out exactly 1 inch. So right now I've done that. I've pushed it in and then I've pulled it out 1 inch. And then what you're going to do is measure from the center of here to the center of here, and that's going to be your drive shaft measurement. So 2 ways of doing it. Like you can go from the center of the hole, or you can go from the bottom of this edge to this edge. It's going to give you the same measurement. In my particular case, it's 31 inches center to center. I've got to figure out, I'm quite certain I have the truck U-joints on the back. I think they're 1320s, they're not 1310s, and I'm quite certain I've got the same thing for this yoke. But what I'm going to do is I'll go online, I'll get the measurements for the Ford U-joints, and then I'll double check what they are before I go in to get the drive shaft made up. But I'll go in with that 31 inch measurement, the type of U-joints I have front and back, because there's other applications where we've actually hooked up a Ford rear end to a Chev transmission. So we've got a Chev U-joint on one end and a Ford on the other. When they make the transmissions up, when they make up the drive shafts, that is, they can actually accommodate you by putting the Ford yoke on the back of it and then the Chev yoke on the front. But in this case here, we should more than likely are going with a 1320 and a 1320 here as well. But I'm going to measure them and double check. So I will take the yoke, the measurement, and the type of U-joints, and I'm going to go into Dartmouth here, where we've got 2 different places. There's a place called Driveline Services and Parts for Trucks. I'll go into one of those places and we'll order up a drive shaft. It probably will not be here for next week, but it'll be for a future episode. So anyways, we're going to carry on here, moving the Camera Lady's chassis along. So that's it for another week of Coldstream Rod Shop. Like most weeks, we start off doing a bunch of things, a lot of plans, and it just kind of goes different ways. Wound up playing with Brenda's Roadster a lot more than what I planned to. Not really a whole lot of stuff we had to do to it, but trying to take it for a few shakedown runs and stuff. It drives really well. Just going through a few tune-up things, and also realizing that there's a couple more things that we're going to do for them. One thing we realized after taking a few runs was that the emergency brake lever comes up through the floor. There's an air gap there, so we're going to get a little boot. I found that after you're driving for a while, a lot of warm air comes up through there. And also, when we were doing the insulation on the inside, we didn't do the floor of the firewall. We are going to do that for them. I don't know that we'll be doing any carpet or anything else because they want to kind of get it back and drive it a little bit. Few other things, like I said, we're going to put a plug on one of the breather areas and stuff like that in the next episode. But, you know, actually it's a nice little car to drive, and we had some fun driving it. And of course, we worked on the Camera Lady's car, on her chassis. Not much did we do on Ellie's Coupe, but that'll be next week. So anyway, that's it for this week, Coldstream Rod Shop. Hope you enjoyed the few things we did. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Come on back next week and see what we're working on. Everybody take care. Have a great week.